Welcome to episode 10 of the Smart Alec podcast. It is May 15th. We are done with the legislative session. I'm here, as always, with producer Ethan Black, my aide.
Hello.
Ethan, what's up, man?
I'm doing well. I'm taking a trip tomorrow with some buddies of mine. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to Mexico City.
That is awesome. So we are done with the legislative session. I would say that the legislative session can be summed up with promises made, promises kept. Looking back on all the things that we did, all the bills that we passed, it's amazing how much was accomplished. And the things that were accomplished were things that people talked about on the campaign trail and things that people talked about before session. Mm-hmm. And then looking back, we got so much of it done. So that it's a pretty good feeling to be all wrapped up and finished.
Yeah, in the moment, you're so overwhelmed with dealing with the new different things that pop up every day and making sure this piece of legislation goes forward or that piece of legislation goes forward. And at the end, to be able to look back on it and see all that you accomplished is pretty nice.
It's really nice. And if you look at the past year comparisons, fewer bills died this year than in years past, which means people were bringing forward thoughtful, meaningful legislation. More bills passed this year than in past legislative sessions, which means they garnered more support than they have in years past. And so, I think individually, our office had a very successful year. One thing that we didn't talk a lot about was at the end of session, literally on the last day of session, funding for the water plan through the legalization of sports betting passed.
That was very cool.
It was cool.
We're recording this in the building right now, so I'm not sure if I can tell people in November to go off and vote for the Tabor thing. I can't do that, but
I think you probably can. There will be, so I think what you're saying is there will be a referred measure to pass a tax on sports betting operators on their net betting proceeds, and that tax, the main beneficiary to the revenue that would be generated will be the Colorado Water Plan. So preserving Colorado's way of life, preserving our most precious resource, preserving what makes recreation here in Colorado so precious, whether or not that's hiking or fly fishing or skiing. And so hopefully it passes. I imagine the Colorado voters will get behind something like this. And so we'll see. But that was a pretty heavy lift that kind of flew under the radar a little bit.
No, it was under the radar, but that's something that you need to remember. There are still things on which you can vote this November, even though no one's running for big office or president or anything. You can still vote to legalize water. Legalize sports betting. Water is already legal. It's not illegal yet, not until we go full Democratic overreach. Just kidding.
Since session ended, we have lost 2 Game 7s. The Colorado Avalanche and the Denver Nuggets had great seasons.
Both great games, honestly.
And great games, except, that Nuggets game. It was tough having it on Mother's Day at 1:30 in the afternoon. I was trying to make sure I was being a good husband and dad while at the same time watching the Nuggets choke away a 17-point lead. It was pretty disappointing, to be honest. Maybe the worst choke in Colorado sports history, other than getting swept by the Boston Red Sox in the World Series in 2007?
I don't know. The 2014 Super Bowl was pretty bad.
The Seahawks crushed us. But it's like we never had a chance in that game. I think the equivalent of a choke is you have to have, the victory in grasp. Well, to add to the disappointment of television watching, can we talk a little bit about Game of Thrones? Spoiler alert, I don't even know what that means, but...
Yeah, well, no, this season of Game of Thrones, I think, has been a bummer. I think the writers are phoning it in. They're just moving way too fast.
Yeah. I think, I obviously like politics. I obviously like competing factions. That's the business we're in. That was the intrigue of the show.
That was the first 4 seasons were great.
They were great. It was all about which family was which. I had to read up on what exactly happened because it was so complex and it was so interesting. Now, I feel like they've gone full-blown Hollywood, have these hour-long battle scenes. The last season shouldn't have been 6 episodes. It should have been 10 episodes at least, because there hasn't been enough development of the plot, and we have essentially steamrolled through what every other season had led up to that point. So I agree with you. I think disappointing. I feel like the writers are definitely cutting corners and just trying to button this thing up, and we're going to be left with a bad taste in our mouth because there's like a 0% chance you can round this out by Sunday in one episode in a way that's going to satisfy the viewers that were so fascinated by the series' first couple seasons. So, session is now in the interim. We have interim committees that have been created. There's a school finance one. There's one on a prison population. There's one on higher education. There's one on energy, power plants. They will start meeting beginning in June-ish and July-ish.
So what's the point of those? What do they accomplish?
It's an opportunity to bring legislators together in a formal way to talk about specific issues. They can structure the interim committee meetings the way that they want. Each committee has a certain number of meetings that they can have. So you could bring in people to testify. You could bring in experts. You could bring in consultants.
And what kind of stuff would they talk about at these meetings? You know, how is this different than a normal committee meeting during session?
You know, they're not looking at bills, amending bills per se yet. What they're doing is they are holding informational meetings before they get to the point where at the end of the interim committee they can draft bills and send those on to Leg Council to see if Leg Council will pass them before they send them to the General Assembly in 2020.
So this is basically, if you got something that's very difficult and complicated, that you need a lot of time with stakeholders and need a lot of time to figure out, you throw it into an interim committee. But
yeah, you're right. No, it's all about you. Interim committees allow you to collect information on a complex topic, bring in experts to inform committee members, to explore solutions to that problem, draft them, put them in bill form, and see if you can move them forward in the next legislative session.
And these are usually bipartisan, correct?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that will be going on. You know, I think we will be meeting with constituents, with people from the community who are interested in certain legislative solutions leading up to 2020. I'll be meeting with the executive committee tomorrow, actually, to talk through.
And what is the executive committee, for those who don't know?
Yeah, the executive committee is made up of the 6 highest ranking members in the General Assembly. So the Speaker, Majority Leader in the House, the Minority Leader in the House, the President, the Majority Leader in the Senate, and the Minority Leader in the Senate. And so we meet in the interim. Tomorrow we'll be talking through possibly creating a interim committee on school safety.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have been wanting something like that.
Yeah, after the STEM shooting, which kind of rocked our community again, another tragic shooting and leaving policymakers in this place where they're trying to figure out, what are the solutions that we can do. Maybe there isn't a perfect solution, but I think everyone agrees we have to continue to think through and work on ways to make our schools what they should be, a place to learn, a place to allow your mind to expand and to explore who you are, not a place to fear your safety.
Amen. Amen.
And that means to all our listeners, we have time. So if you want to set up a meeting to come in and meet with me and or Ethan, you want to jump on the podcast, you wanted to bring an important topic to the podcast for us to explore, please reach out, alecgarnett@gmail.com, or just call the office at 303-866-2911. I think we're going to have probably not as frequent podcasts, but we're still going to have podcasts that are going to explore what we've been doing in the interim, the meetings that we've been having with constituents, the ideas that we've been exploring for the 2020 legislative session. And, maybe we'll have one outside the building where we can talk about the mayoral politics, the municipal politics that are happening, there are recall elections that have been filed, and we can kind of dig in maybe to the politics side of this business outside of the building.
Yeah, so stay listening, and if you are an expert in something, either that we've talked about before or you think would be good, please reach out to us. We would love to have you on and hear from you, and also, have the rest of the public hear from you.
So to all our listeners, thank you so much for following us through the 2019 legislative session. It was quite a ride. We made promises before. We kept those promises. Hopefully you feel more educated on how the legislative process works down here at the Capitol. You feel like it's more accessible, and you have left this podcast a more knowledgeable citizen in the state of Colorado. Don't forget to like and to rate and to comment on the Smart Aleck podcast. Help us make it to the top of the charts. And thank you so much for listening to the Smart Aleck podcast.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Peace.